the United States Capitol. Joining us now, member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee's Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. Senator King, it's good to see you this morning. So much to go through with you. Let's begin, though, with this deal we're hearing about, a counter-proposal from Republicans on the infrastructure bill, expected to be about $1 trillion. One thing we know, and they've been explicit about, though, is they're not going to go for a tax hike, which is fundamental and at the core of what the White House has proposed here. So do you see room for negotiation? Is there potential for a deal? Because there are a lot of people in Washington saying no chance with the non-starter of the tax hike.
Well, I think it depends a lot on what they come back with today, Willie. The president has made it clear that he'll compromise. I was in a meeting with he and a group of Republicans a couple of weeks ago, and he pretty much started the meeting saying, look, I'm not wedded to this. Make me a reasonable offer. The big question, though, as you point out, is not what's in the bill, although there are a lot of discussions and debate about that. But the real question is, how will it be paid for? The president was pretty straightforward, and I give him credit for at least coming forward with a pay for, which in this day and age is that's news. He said, let's move the corporate tax rate, which was reduced from 35 to 21 in the Trump tax cut, back up to 28, which is somewhere near the international average, and that will largely pay for this. The Republicans have said, no way, that's our signature achievement in 2017. We're not going to do it. And so they've been talking about, you hear the phrase user fees, which frankly surprises me that they're talking about that. That's a euphemism for the gas tax. And that's really what is in discussion here. The White House has rejected that. They've said that's a regressive tax. It applies to everybody. It hurts lower income people more than wealthy people. So they want to go with the income tax. The other solution that's kicking around out there, and I've advocated for this, is, hey, let's collect the taxes that tax cheats aren't paying. The estimates are from $500 billion to $1 trillion a year, Willie, of money that isn't collected, mostly from high-income people who have all the lawyers and the accountants to game the system. And that's one way, and the president's talked about this. The Republicans say no to that as well. So I think the rock that this is going to founder on is how it's paid for, and I'm fascinated to see what they're going to come up with today.
So you're talking, Senator, about the new legislation that you're introducing with Senator Kaine and Senator Brown about closing the tax gap. If I understand it correctly, you just want the taxes already on the books to actually be paid, to actually be collected.
Yeah, think of that. You and I pay our taxes, but there are other people that don't pay theirs. And the IRS has been essentially crippled. Going back to the Obama administration, they've lost a lot of their funding. They used to audit something like 1.5% or 2% of returns. Now it's down to less than half of 1%. And unfortunately, in the last few years, they've been focusing their audits on lower-income people. Are they cheating on the earned income tax credit where, they'll collect hundreds of dollars instead of on the high-income, high-roller cheats where they could collect millions of dollars. So we're saying, hey, let's just enforce the law. Everybody in America that gets a W-2 and has withholding, they're paying their taxes. How about the people that are cheating the system? Only two things happen if somebody doesn't pay their taxes. Either you and I have to make up the difference, or we borrow the difference from our kids. So that, to me, that's a solution. It's not raising taxes. It's not cutting essential programs. And that's one way that we can attack this thing.
Senator Kasie Hunt is here with a question for you. Case?
Senator, always good to see you. If I could ask you to put your Intelligence Committee hat on for just a second. We've had some news about the potential origins of the COVID-19 virus, and the Senate actually just passed an amendment spearheaded by Senator Josh Hawley to try and require the ODNI to declassify what they know about where it came from. I'm wondering, based on what you know, how seriously do you take the idea that this virus could have been leaked from a lab?
Well, basically, I saw Dr. Fauci on your program a little earlier, and he said, I'm not sure, and that's the way I feel. It's a possibility. It seems like quite a coincidence that there's a lab in the city of Wuhan, which we know is where this disease came from, that experiments with viruses. So it seems to me it's worth tracking down, although our intelligence agencies are going to do the best they can. But the Chinese know the answer to this. And frankly, if it was a lab accident, I don't know why they don't just say so and say, look, this didn't happen on purpose. We're trying to defeat these viruses. It was an accident. And, we move on from there. But the only concern I have about by the way, that I was watching Josh Hawley make that speech last night about how we needed transparency and investigation. The American people deserve the truth. I mean, it was all very high-minded. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is the guy that opposes the investigation vigorously that we want to do into January 6th. So, you could have some fun with that clip and talk about the January 6th investigation, which was a pretty serious attack on democracy, but I'll put that aside. But the thing that concerns me is what they call sources and methods. We want to be careful about declassifying the information that we have, so that would enable the Chinese to sort of reverse engineer the information and figure out how we got it. That would compromise whatever sources we may have had or whatever methods we had for obtaining that information. That's always the challenge when you're talking about declassifying information. But everybody wants to know the answer to this, and I think we should pursue it in whatever way we can. But the easiest thing would be for the Chinese to come clean.
We might be waiting a long time for that. Senator Mike Barnicle has a question for you. Mike?
Yeah, Senator, let's stick with this topic for a second, if you don't mind. The Chinese have been nothing less than evasive on their responsibility with regard to the Wuhan labs, and we don't know the story. We might never know the story. But if it were to turn out that the Chinese did have some culpability in terms of what happened, in terms of a lab accident, what do you think would be their global responsibility to the world, to countries around the world who have been so impacted by this horrendous and are still being impacted by this horrendous disaster? I mean, we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 months lag time in between the time the accident occurred, if it was an accident in the lab, and when the world really became alerted to the morbid circumstances of the virus.
Well, I do think they have some responsibility in that case, if that turns out to be the case. And, how you would define that, I mean, it goes from everything from, compensation to victims to probably more likely some support of international efforts to spread the vaccine to the poorer countries. But, the Chinese, again, their instinct is secrecy. And I think in this case, it hurt them. They hurt themselves. I mean, I remember hearing that one of the doctors that first reported this ended up in jail or ended up being punished in some way. And the Chinese are kind of trying to have it two ways. They want to be players and accepted on the world scene, and they're investing in other countries and trying to reach out around the world. And yet at the same time, they're this very, very closed system, oppressing their own people, not coming clean on the origin of the virus. And in the long run, one of the things I said to somebody the other day in thinking about this, we have allies, China has customers. And if they want to ultimately have allies, they're going to have to start playing the game by some kind of recognized international rules. And one of them is accept responsibility and do what you can to ameliorate the effects.
So far, they have not done that. Senator Angus King of Maine, always good to talk with you. A busy morning. Thanks for your time this morning.